Intro. I met Alan 2 years ago on a presentation of him, and I had the chance afterwards to ask him some questions about my startup, and he gave me really sharp answers. So I'm really excited that he will share his insights today with us. So hi, that's Florian from 99 Startups, and today I'm here with Alan Duric, the CEO of Wire.
Hi Florian, and thank you for inviting me to your podcast.
Thanks for being here. Just maybe for the beginning, tell us something what Wire is and like what's your mission, what's your vision. Tell us something about it.
Mm-hmm. Wire, in a short or in a nutshell, is a company that shields your digital privacy. And there, what I mean, if you are a consumer, if you're individual, or if you are a company, and by shielding your privacy, we are also at the same time protecting integrity and security of your digital assets and their communications being one of the most important, or if not the most important asset.
So what's your that's your mission? Like what's your vision then? Like that everyone uses encrypted messaging, every transaction over the internet is encrypted, or how you would say is your vision for the future for Wire or our general future?
Mm-hmm. So speaking in a Simon Sinek's language, this part about shielding your digital privacy would be our why. Our how is that we are shielding it by using the state-of-the-art encryption technologies, and that we do it in a way that it's easy to be consumed by the masses. Because we've seen in the past cases where brilliant technologies such as PGP were not adopted by mass market, and they were not adopted because they were not really user-friendly. So we do it in a user-friendly way that it can be taken up by the mass market. And then when you look about what for Wire, our first step was about consumer market. Our next step is about business market. So we are now at the end of October launching offering for small medium businesses. Beginning of the next year, during the first half of the next year, we'll be launching also offering for the enterprises, where enterprises can host their own instances of Wire. And then going beyond that, when you have a super secure technology platform, protocol, and a number of users that are embracing your technology around the world, then after human, next step is to go towards machines. And we believe also that we have a very strong base and a very strong platform that could be used in different verticals, such as automotive industry with the driverless cars, with the Internet of Things paradigm, with the connected home, then with the digital health, and a number of other technologies of future.
So I remember that I heard from you the quote that you compared privacy to smoking. Not like in the past, like everyone was smoking, nobody was like you heard about it, it's not good for your health, but you still did do it. And I completely agree with that. It's kind of the same with privacy. Everyone heard about it, that it should be important, but like, you know, if you look around to the mainstream, it seems like the people just go on and don't care about privacy. So what out of your perspective is the best way to educate the mainstream in that and like explain to them why it's important to go for your privacy?
Thanks. That's a tough question, and this is something what is basically keeping us motivated and keeping us pushing a lot further to educate the market. And unfortunately, they are similar as with the smoking, to use again that power of analogy. It takes a long time, and it takes a number of casualties for people to realize. And then as it was with the smoking, when they've seen some of their close ones, family or friends or someone that they knew passing away from lung cancer, and then as it was popping up more and more data and research and inevitable evidence that this is really causing it, then it raised the awareness among the people. On the privacy side as well, there is already popping up cases and lawsuits against large ones like Google, etc., to name some, where people slowly start to get an idea on what is happening there. But I'm pretty convinced that within next 12 months, especially with the rise of a GDPR or a General Data Protection Regulation that is getting in force mid next year, awareness of the mass market is going to be higher. And good thing is also that institutions started doing their job, and this is something what is going to be helping us rise this awareness. And if we can then give a message to your listeners is make sure that you read and user license agreement of the product that you are using. Make sure that you read a privacy agreement for the services that you are using, especially for those that are free ones, because the price that you are paying may be very expensive and maybe even one that you cannot afford. And then if those are the ones or those agreements, if you cannot read them, if they are written by lawyers for lawyers, make sure to raise awareness about that and to talk to others, because this is the only way that you can push them and that we can all bring to the users privacy agreements and user license agreements that are made really for them, that could be understood by them, and that they can then consciously decide if this is something for them to use or not.
Yeah, really good answer, and it will be definitely one of the challenges in our future. To go a bit back in your past, like your track record is really impressive. Like you had like one company on the stock market, 2 companies acquired by Google and Skype. So what would you say were the biggest learnings out of your past company fundings?
Some of the biggest learnings would be invest in people, pay attention to people that are in your company, surround yourself with clever people. And one thing what I see specifically in Germany, which I think has a big room for improvement, is passing part of the equity to employees. So there is a very few startups, unfortunately, in Berlin where employees have a sizable part of the equity, because it is better to have a little bit less of something what's really big than to have a big piece of a tiny cake. And this is I think one of the best ways how to make sure that your colleagues are completely aligned with your goals, because company is being made at the hard times and at the hardships, and when those times come, if people that are working with you are also your business partners, not only your employees, this is something that definitely helps.
Interesting. So you have like in a company definitely the mission, the vision, and then what you described is definitely part of the culture. Like share the value of the company. How else would you describe the culture of Wire?
So culture of Wire, and the way to describe it would be also openness and delivering directly feedback to your colleagues about the good things, but also about the things that are bothering you. And this is something that we are working on continuously, and that we are embracing it. Also taking external advice and the coaches for the team to teach people in the team how to deliver feedback. And this, if we would isolate one of the things that really creates or the impacts culture the most in a startup, that would be this culture of a feedback and being open about the things that are bothering us, and being also open about the elephants in the room. For us also at Wire, this has been a learning process, so it hasn't been that perfect from the start, but after some iterations and some time, I think we got it right.
So what's also really impressive, like I saw that your place is in the middle of the office, like you don't have your own room and you're hiding there. No, you're like sitting in the middle of your people. Do you have experience like how to keep this closeness if your company's grows? Like if you're getting not only 50 people, you get like 100 or 200. Do you have experience with that?
I do with one of my previous startups that also through acquisition it grown up to 500 people, and generally there it is always the most comfortable when you are up to a size of 100 plus people, because this is still the size where you can remember everyone's partner's name or a kid's name, and still have a very personal connection with everyone. Once when you go beyond that number, then it becomes quite difficult. And also when you look that from anthropology, it is something was described with a Dunbar's number, and that number is basically giving you the number of relationships that you can have within a certain group on a very intimate level. So that's also why you see all the tribes in Africa and jungles and elsewhere, they would also be like up to a size of 100. Then also the military units also they go up to a size of 100, etc. So this is something that always need to remember at Wire, that we enjoy it while it's at that stage, and that we also embrace it as much as we can as it lasts, because then once when it goes beyond it, then it's way harder to follow it.
So then, what do you do if it will be over 100? You will split it up and do it like the military, like do little tribes then, or what would be then your approach?
This is basically the way that it has been done with this previous startup that I mentioned, and also there through acquisition we acquired a couple of hundred people, so they were already like a kind of a tribe on their own. But it is also then very important to make sure that those tribes do not become silos, and that they cooperate a lot, and there it is always important then that you find a meaningful processes, and also a meaningful roadmap that would also embrace all parts of the organization, and also a number of other small routines where I think we are pretty good at Wire for the time being, like first starting with the onboarding, so that new people that are coming that they get all of the most important parts of the culture in the company, that they already know quite a lot, because when they know quite a lot, then they are also more comfortable with it, and they are more comfortable also to engage in a certain process or a certain activity. And also we need to make sure always to encourage it, and to have this culture of a dialogue, and regardless of who is a part of which tribe or which different team.
So so if you hire, you check then for their experience in giving feedback or the experience and knowledge in the place or in the area they worked before, or for what you checked on a hiring process.
So on the hiring process, HR streamlined it quite nicely, and the minimum or the basic criteria that someone needs to fulfill is that it is a team player, that it is a person that is also a person that is nice to go for a lunch with, or nice to have a beer after work. So also a number of times during the interview process, a candidate is being taken to a bit less formal venue, like a coffee place or to a lunch place, and then this is the basic part. So if someone is even technically amazingly proficient or a genius, but if it is failing on this part, it is a no-go, while then they go for the next steps on the ladder, and we are evaluating their technical skills or the skills related to a specific area, if it is a business skills. And interview process consists always of at least 4 people beside HR, and there cannot be any red light. So we have a simple traffic light principle where at the end of process it is a given light or color depending on experience that person that was interviewing had with a candidate, and then if there is only one red, that person is not accepted by the team.
Okay. So probably you have several interviews then for that. How many interviews you do with a candidate? By average?
Depends on the specific candidate, and depends on a specific position. And on this side, would also warmly recommend you talking to our HR specialist, Natalia, who can give you loads of tips and tricks and best current practices that we are using in this area.
Cool. So we learn the most out of mistakes normally. So what you would say in your business career, what were your biggest mistakes you learned the most of?
I think also partly from Wire, with the last experience, because with a Wire we needed to do after a spectacular launch where we had more downloads than what Skype had. We also noticed that some of our cornerstones or the main premises that we were basing Wire on, like privacy and user experience, became our enemies, and that happened because, for instance, like with the privacy, we didn't want you, when you're installing your Wire Messenger, we didn't want you to register with your mobile number, and we didn't want you to upload your address book, but at the same time we didn't create a network effect. So among this massive number of users that downloaded Wire at our launch, very few of them had enough contacts to start a meaningful conversations. And similarly with our user interface, that was quite ahead of a time, beautiful. We won a number of design awards, was also confusing for average user. So we had to dial back there. So the main learning here is that get out of the box and get out of your office and do a really good research about the product that you are going to launch, and make sure that you know right away who's your user or who's your customer, and make sure that that you have what it takes for them to use your product or your service.
So if you could go back in time, then would you change the design, or would you make then a compromise with the address book there? How would you because it's also like a kind of sacrifice then for your values, like, you know, if you have the data privacy value there, but then also the kind of the goal to grow, how you decide then what's the right thing to do?
So on that side, like now, looking from this perspective, it would be better if a user had a choice, and if a user knew right away what are the pros and cons of a choice that it is given to him, rather than that we are making assumptions on behalf of the users. So this is what I would do differently this time.
Cool. So how does a typical day of you look like? Like, how is a typical day of Alan Duric look like?
So usually it would start 8:15 with the morning meeting with some of the team members at Ben Rahim, my favorite coffee shop here at Hackesche Hofe. I like, especially when there are certain subjects that are a bit more complex or a bit less pleasant to discuss with. I like to take it in a less formal environment, and like to take it as a first thing in the morning. So usually it would start 8:15 there, and then by 9:15 then would come to office, get another coffee or get another fix of caffeine, either through a green tea or a matcha or something else, and then at 9:30 we are starting with some of the daily meetings, and then by 10:15 those daily meetings and everything should be done and concluded, and then a period from 10:15 until 12 is usually reserved for follow-ups, if there is anything from the daily meetings what has to be followed up, and then from 12 to 1, this is usually the time when there is another meeting booked, one-on-ones with direct reports, either as a lunch meeting or as a coffee meeting. And then I like from the period of roughly from 1 to 3 to keep it unbooked if I can, and then do some thinking and do some planning and follow up on some of the things that need attention. And then again from 3 to 5 there may be again certain discussions that need to take place, or one-on-one meetings. And then from 5, that is a time usually when our investors are waking up on the West Coast in the US. So then eventually another call at that time, and then evenings depends. Sometimes they are still quite busy, and then this is the part when I'm usually uninterrupted, and when I like to do some of the creative parts of my work, or also go for a dinner with business partners, or with other people from tech community in Berlin, or occasionally just sit down and read a good book, or even less often watch some nice movie and take it easy. And then by 12 o'clock always aiming to be in the bed.
So what is your tactic to keep the overview? Like, if you have 1 to 3 free, like, how do you keep the overview? How you can kind of get like your mind free and like do a bit more out of the stress thinking and like prepare for everything, because like it's really tight schedule.
That's actually a quite hard part, especially when people have some of the pressing issues, and so I make certain times exceptions and then book part of that time for those pressing issues. But I rather like to keep it as exception. And one thing also, what I would recommend your listeners is to check a bit on meditation. And before this 8:15 meeting every morning, I'm meditating roughly like 20 minutes. Have a completely calm mind and start the day with a completely calm mind. And after meditation, also look for a 10-15 minutes to look. Okay, what is my day looking like? What are the things that I want to achieve during this day? And then also before I go to sleep, I like also to see like, okay, did I achieve the stuff what I planned to do? And there have a nice application called Things that is pretty cool, and it's also I think made in Berlin. It is made in Germany, but I think also even made in Berlin. So quite nice way to follow up on your things that you want to achieve during the day.
Cool. So what do you use as sources to get inspired? Like what do you use as sources to invest in yourself?
Usually over the weekends, if it is winter time, adrenaline junkie and love to do snowboarding, off-piste snowboarding, do some stuff which is gonna pump adrenaline quite high and take your mind completely off from everything on a daily basis. During the other seasons, spring, autumn, it's usually my hiking time. Love to hike, go into the mountains, and summertime power boating. Also addict on the speed side, so love to pump some adrenaline and take a stress that way, and get again on Monday hungry for the work and for the tasks that I do. And then of course, as the weeks are winding down, always love some good food and good wine, etc. So those are also some of the guilts or sins that I love to do.
That's good. So what are the best books you can recommend?
If it is a book that I read lately, it would be from Kim Scott, Radical Candor. Kim is an author that I know personally from early stages of her career while she was still with Delta 3, and what she's talking in a book is basically in a nutshell, it would be delivering feedback to your teammates, to your managers, to your reports in a very respectful way, building a really healthy atmosphere at work. And no matter how much you know and how good culture you have in your company, I think from this book there is definitely a number of good tips to be picked up. If I would also recommend another book, it would be a little bit older one that I read roughly 10-15 years ago. It is published by Harvard Business Press, and the author is Frans Johansson, Swedish author, and the book is called The Medici Effect. So what he's talking in the book is how the great invention happens, and if we abstract it and summarize, this book, it would be that those great inventions are happening whenever you put certain thing at intersection. So, for instance, if you are putting internet and telecom at intersection, there is a great inventions that are happening there. So that's like the whole messaging space and the whole voice over IP, Skype and other things happen. But also he's looking at micro perspective, not only macro perspective. So when you are putting people of a different backgrounds, different nationalities, different education, different ethnicities, religion, anything that brings also a massive value, and that it also stimulates quite nicely innovation. And innovation is, as you know, like in technology and in a number of other fields is the key to succeed. And that's also what I'm quite proud that at Wire we have roughly 24-25 different nations on a team that is barely above 50 people, and also people with all sorts of different backgrounds, different education, etc.
So my last question would be, you said like feedback is really important in your culture, but where you as person get your feedback from, if you are like the CEO of the company, and like how you get your feedback?
I'm getting I think from all sides feedback, also from all of the employees, a number of them that are not the direct reports, and through HR we have one quite nice routine that we started not that long time ago, where all of the new employees are having a coffee with the CEO, and I'm just coming to your podcast from one of those sessions. And these kind of sessions are, among other things, meant to break the ice and to make all of the employees deliver this feedback directly about the things that work, but especially about the things that have a good room for improvement, and also through this one encourage them that all of the stuff after feedback is delivered to their managers or peers and employees, if they didn't get enough of the attention on that one, that they just take it further in, again, non-intrusive way, and in a way that it should not upset anyone. And in order to have that kind of escalation, and in order to deliver this kind of feedback, there is needed to establish first respect among both of the sides, or sides that are involved in this discussion, and then it is that is a really good platform for anything else.
Cool. Thank you very much, Allen. And so we stop the podcast here, and thank you very much.
Yeah. Thanks, Florian. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Thanks for listening. To get the show notes, just subscribe and feel free to leave comments. Until next time.